All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 14, our SEC football betting show, each and every Thursday here on the channel with Brian Edwards, who joins us as always. And Brian, we're already into week 4. I feel like we just started doing this show not long ago, and here we are in week 4 now. And we have got some very interesting games. And as we know, always fun to get into these SEC on SEC heavy slates. We got a little bit of a teaser of that last week, but this week, quite a few more games, and so that makes it more exciting.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and really a major opportunity for Ole Miss. I mean, if this is, I mean, the gates are wide open. I don't remember the last time the SEC looked so down. And Ole Miss has never made it to Atlanta. I think they did a season opener against Boise State 5 or 6 years back, but they have not made it that first Saturday in December. And there's a golden opportunity for that right now. I mean, obviously LSU will have a lot to say about that as well, but this is certainly their best chance to beat um, Alabama since Hugh Freeze left. And I wish for Ole Miss' sake that these three skill players that are really, 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 really good. I don't know that I don't know how healthy they are, and I don't know. I feel like Prescorn's got a good chance at playing, and I think Zachary Franklin might play. I, I don't think Trey Harris is going to play, but who knows? Maybe there's not a whole lot of information out there that makes you really confident in anything about all three of them. So we shall see. But not just that game though. Kentucky in revenge mode after losing to Vandy last year. We got Mississippi State and South Carolina both in bounce back mode, and then Auburn and A&M. So yeah, we got some good ones this weekend. And just nationally, it's a great slate. In fact, I don't know if you saw that tweet from the Bear, Chris Felica, that we have not had this many, I think there's 6 top 25 matchups, and we haven't had as many top 25 matchups in a September weekend since I think he said 2006. So good
Wow.
card.
Yeah, good card for sure. And since you set it up on a tee, we're just going to start with the one everyone has discussed, and that is Ole Miss +7 at Alabama. In this game, I've seen this line start to dip a little bit. There's some places now where it's 6.5, and I can't say I'm shocked by that because I do feel like this is the one where everybody here, Brian, is maybe not everybody, but there is a lot of momentum in saying if Lane Kiffin's going to do this, it has to be now because this is the time to capitalize on an Alabama team that just came off of scoring 17 points. It's South Florida, has played 3 quarterbacks at this point. They turned back to Jalen Milroe this week to see if they can find something offensively. The defense is still in Alabama. I think, defense, there's a lot to like there, but as you said, Ole Miss's health is perhaps the biggest key here because if they have a lot of their skill guys out there, which Harris may not be one of them, but you look back at last year, Judkins ran all over them a season ago. What was it? I think he had 23 carries, 135, and a couple touchdowns, something like that last year. I can't imagine there's a better setup here for Ole Miss, but I think we've probably said that before, although
Sure.
this feels different because of Alabama's offense or lack thereof. And so a lot of people riding Ole Miss +7. I will tell you that I'm one of them. I'm not a 20 plus year veteran like you, but everything I look at in this thing, I just see everything turning up Ole Miss, and this feels like if you're getting Ole Miss with a touchdown, that's a lot for an Alabama team that sometimes I feel like you wonder, can they score a touchdown offensively? So
Yeah, Blake, we're on the same page here. I've liked Ole Miss all week. I made Alabama a 3.5 point favorite in this game, and felt like I was kind of being generous to Bama, and felt like I had to put a half on there out of respect for Nick Saban. You know, when I just think that if Ole Miss was at home, they'd be favored. I don't think
yeah,
there's any doubt about that. But so right now, most books are at 6.5 or 7. Most books 55 or 55.5. If you like Ole Miss on the money line, which I'm not against, certainly if we get pre-scoring, or if we get two of those three injured players in uniform, I would not be against a little bit on the money line. And I will. I decided to pull the trigger on Ole Miss +7 today. I've been, kind of waiting all week, wanting to get more injury info. But as a good bit of books started to move to 6.5, I'm like, okay, if I want 7, I better go ahead
Yeah.
and lock it in. And so I did. I'm not against the over, but I think I'm just gonna go with Ole Miss. I may throw in maybe just for giggles an over Ole Miss, maybe parlay or a reverse or something just for fun. But Ole Miss +7 is the play. One more thing on this one. It was last week that we talked about Tennessee had the dreaded players only meeting, which is always a red flag and a clear indicator of chemistry issues and just struggles in general. And it was Alabama that had the players only meeting after the USF game. And I think there's chemistry issues with Alabama, and I just think they got a lot of issues. I mean, that offense was just a disaster um, last week. And look, defensively, no, they were fine last week defensively. But even when, like Texas in the fourth quarter, you're down 10, you're just dying to get a stop, and they just couldn't get off the field. They could
Yeah.
not stop Texas. So I still think Alabama's got a good defense, maybe even one that'll be really good eventually. But I think Ole Miss has got an outstanding offense. Even if all three of these guys, Prescore and Harris and Franklin, don't play, Ole Miss still has enough weapons, to move the ball and win this game. And Jackson Dart has been excellent this year. Just a couple other nuggets I will throw out. Ole Miss has only been a road underdog under Kiffin 5 times, and they are 2-3 against the spread. And for those Bama fans that like to listen to our show that are sensing a major bounce back and think that the Tide is going to right the ship, and it's all much ado about nothing, all the criticism, etc. Well, you've got an adjusted season win total at DraftKings that if you like Alabama to go no worse than 9-3, the win total is 8.5. If you want the over, you got to pay a -135 price. So if you want to win 100, risk 135. And for those that think they're going to win 8 or fewer, you could risk 100 and win 110. And that was DraftKings had a lot of adjusted season win totals, but Alabama was the only SEC team they had it for. So I am on Ole Miss +7, and I lean to the over, especially if two of those three injured Ole Miss players end up in uniform. But I'm not going to call that an official play, if you will. Just Ole Miss +7.
All right, on to the next one here as Kentucky and Vanderbilt meet. You mentioned a minute ago revenge on the mind of the Wildcats, who did not fare well, as we know, last year against Vanderbilt in terms of everything that unfolded with that one. And this is one where I know instead of just kind of looking at the spread on this one, looking at the actual over under on this one, definitely enticing when you consider potential here, I think, for scoring. We saw the Vanderbilt UNLV game last week, just unbelievable kind of turn of events there where Vanderbilt gives up 30 unanswered points, I think, in that game. And just should not happen. That's really the best way to put it. And so now you look at this game and sort of the way it sets up. I think I know you're going to go over under here, but I will say there was one stat that I saw, and I thought this was just a very fascinating stat. I think it was the Action Network that had this stat. Um, Kentucky is, what is it, 13 and a half or 14, I think, now on the spread. I want to say it's still 13 and a half, maybe is what
13
I'm
and a
seeing.
half at most spots.
So, very interesting stat here that Mark Stoops, it is from the Action Network, closes a 14 plus point favorite in SEC play 4 times. Each of those have come against Vanderbilt and failed to cover in all 4 of those games by over 11 points per game. So Vanderbilt has actually played Kentucky very well, all things considered. Of course, getting the win last year. So Kentucky 0-4 in those kind of instances where they are basically 2 touchdown favorites against Vanderbilt. Of course, they were 17-point favorites last year in that game. And so I thought that was kind of a very interesting stat heading into this game, but I know the shootouts is what you kind of look at here with the points.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to those, just the head to head. Vandy is 7-3 against the spread the last 10 times these teams have met, and they have won outright 3 times as they end a 6 year losing streak to Kentucky with that win last year as a 17-point road underdog. So Clark Lee has been a home underdog 10 times as he's now in his 3rd year at Vandy. The Commodores are only 3-7 against the spread as a home underdog. Now, Mark Stoops has been at Kentucky. This is year number 11. He's only been a road favorite 7 times and 3-4 against the spread in those games. So, like we noted, Kentucky is 13.5. The total 50 or 50 and 1/2 at most books. Vandy on the money line is anywhere from plus 390 to plus 430. But as you mentioned, I am looking at the total, and I like the over. I got over 49.5 early in the week, but I like it at 50 or 50 and 1/2. I would say I'd probably like it all the way to 52, but go ahead and get it now if you can get it to 50 or 50 and 1/2. So just some reasoning on that. So Vandy's 4 combined scores this year have been 77, 56, 60, and 63. So all 4 of those, you know, well over this total. Now, I know Kentucky's had more low scoring games, but Kentucky, albeit against cupcake competition, they are averaging 35.7 points per game. Vandy, will be the best defense that Vandy has faced, but I still think Vandy's offense is good, and I think they will have success. AJ Swan now 21-6 career TDINT ratio. Will Shepard, one of the best receivers in the league. Jaden McGowan, probably one of the better true sophomore receivers in the league. And then London Humphreys, man, this guy's averaging he's a true freshman. He's averaging nearly 30 yards a catch. He's got 9 receptions, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So Vandy is right now ranked 28th in the nation in passing yards, 44th in scoring. They're averaging 34.8 points per game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they're giving up 29.3 points per game. So I think this game will get into the 50s, probably into the mid and upper 50s, especially if Vandy, can put up a 21, 24-ish, somewhere in that range. And I don't know that they will get that high, but I certainly think Kentucky is going to get well into the 30s, and I like the over.
All right, this next game here, game you're betting, South Carolina, Mississippi State, an interesting one here on the slate. Of course, Mississippi State trying to bounce back from just getting trounced by LSU last week. Dominant performance for the Tigers, which everyone was kind of looking for from them. And meanwhile, South Carolina goes and kind of shocks the world early in terms of the way they started the game against Georgia. Georgia rallies, but I think if you're South Carolina, still have to feel pretty good about how you come out of that. Just certainly showed some things, of course, injury wise. I don't know how good you feel about things, given a significant injury there, which I know we will discuss. But South Carolina in this one, 6.5-point favorite in this game at home. And Brian, I know you're going towards South Carolina on this one. And boy, I think for Mississippi State, I had a little bit of a little extra something, maybe just coming out of the Arizona game. They managed to win it. I'm like, maybe they can build off of this. But after that performance against LSU, and now to kind of see the way South Carolina played last week against Georgia, even with some injuries, we know to Juice Wells, still think this is a pretty good spot too for the Gamecocks.
Yeah. Any thought process that maybe there's a little bit of letdown for South Carolina because they were obviously sky high for that Georgia game. I think that's completely alleviated by the fact not only are they at home, but they're at home at night, and they've got a great fan base. The crowd will be rocking and rolling, and they're 1-2. They're starving for a W.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go South Carolina minus 6.5. So they've been excellent at home since Shane Beamer took over. 11-4 straight up, 10-5 against the spread. 8 of their 11 home wins under Beamer have been by margins of 9 points or more. They have been home favorites 8 times on Shane Beamer's watch, and they are 6-2 against the spread in those games. Mississippi State, I think I mentioned it coming out, in the summer that I wish that Arnett would have retained more of. I mean, I know Mike Leach is not there to call the plays, but I wish he would have retained more offensive assistance, and at least in year one with Will Rogers still there, not drifted too far away from the air raid principles because he had that system mastered, and they. They're not running anything anywhere near that. And I'm not saying that's not potentially good for the running game, but I mean, obviously we saw their offensive struggles last week, and we're going to watch teams score a lot of points on Arizona this year. And Arizona flew all the way across the country, and I had to struggle to get that dub in overtime. So I'm just down on Mississippi State right now. And Mr. Rattler is playing as good as any QB out there. And his stats last week against Georgia did not do him justice. He was spectacular in that game. Not only his reads, his throws, but his scrambling, his buying time in the pocket, not only when he did scramble, but I mean, I feel like he scrambled for like 3 first downs on 3rd and long. I mean, he just kept them in that game. And who knows if Juice Wells is healthy, because he looked healthy that first drive and he was a major factor. Who knows how that game goes. But in South Carolina, I made the number 8. And so at less than 7, I'm all about the Gamecocks.
Gamecocks seem like they are in a good spot here, I think, for this one. All right, we're going to talk about a couple other SEC games here. Brian, not maybe specific plays on these just yet, but we will talk about them. And let's start with Arkansas LSU. This is one that, again, you talk about a disappointment. Arkansas fans are not feeling great about kind of where they're at coming off that loss to BYU. Not happy with Sam Pittman, the way that game sort of ended there. And I think there is certainly a level of frustration, which, I mean, to cut him some slack, probably too, not having Rocket Sanders has certainly made a difference, I think, and will make a difference in a game like this for sure, because this is a big challenge going up against this LSU team, as we said. They bounced back in a huge way last week, 41-14 at Mississippi State. Looked really good. Malik Neighbors, just a ridiculous stat line last week against Mississippi State. So I guess, Brian, this is an interesting setup. You never know, as we kind of talked about in our daily show, you never know about these rivalry games like this. You can get some weird results. This one was much lower scoring last year than I think that we expected. I think it was, 13-10 or something last
Yes.
year. I feel like this goes in the opposite direction this year. I know Arkansas's defense can be aggressive, but man, I think this is one where I feel like the Hogs have a hard time keeping up with LSU here on the road in this one.
Yeah, so right now most books have LSU favored by 17.5 or
Mm.
18. The total at 54.5 or 55. And if you like the Hogs to pull the upset and win outright, they're plus 600 or 6-1 on the money line. So under Sam Pittman, the Razorbacks have been road underdogs 9 times. They are 6-3 against the spread. They've been double-digit underdogs 9 times. They are 5-4 against the spread, and totally as an underdog, including the games, in Arlington against A&M and bowl games, or home away. 20 times under Pittman, they've been an underdog. They're 13-6-1 against the spread in those games. Now, under Brian Kelly, LSU is a 5-1 against the spread as a home favorite. Now, at home, whether they're favored or underdog under Kelly, they are 7-1, but straight up and against the spread. And as a double-digit favorite under Kelly, they are 5-1 against the spread. In the last 7 head-to-head meetings, LSU has won 6, but they're only 3-3-1 against the spread. And the last 3 head-to-head meetings have all been decided by exactly 3 points, so 9 combined, and 4 of the last head-to-head meetings have been decided by 7 points or fewer. And one last betting nugget on this one, the under has cashed at a 7-2 clip in the last 9 head-to-head meetings. So Rocket Sanders, um, we don't know. I mean, if he does play, I don't think he's going to be 100%.
Yeah.
And it's just such a huge thing for them because he is debatably, for sure, the best running back in the country. I mean, he's one of the top 3 in my opinion, easily. So, and they haven't had him now for several weeks, and so that's huge. And here, as we sit on Thursday, we don't know if they're going to have him. So right now, this game is a pass for me. But like you said, with last year's game, so KJ didn't play in that game. And Arkansas's defense was awful last year,
Yeah.
and LSU was rolling when they came in there, and it was a 13-10 game. It was Arkansas's best effort of the year. And so Arkansas and they just usually play LSU tough. So if I were to see, a half hour before kickoff, Rocket Sanders in uniform, and he looks like he's moving around pretty good, maybe I'd be tempted to maybe get a little bit of Arkansas if they're catching, at least 17 and a half or 18. But there would still be questions of how long he could last, how healthy will he be, etc. So right now, this is probably going to be a pass for me. I'll also just note that Greg Brooks, the safety and former Razorback, is out and had emergency brain surgery, had a brain tumor. So
Yeah.
uh, real serious stuff, and thoughts with him and his family.
Absolutely. All right, on to the next game here. Here's one that I will tell you, talking about the game maybe I'm most intrigued by from a betting standpoint this week. And I think I hesitate, and now I feel like I shouldn't have hesitated because this line has gone up since yesterday by I think a full point now, and that is Auburn and Texas A&M. This is one where I think regular people who watch our stuff, Brian, will tell you, and I've brought this up a couple times this week. I'm not knocking Auburn. I just don't know what I'm supposed to make of Auburn just yet. I mean, they've beaten UMass, Cal, and Sanford. And I don't now that I look at it, I don't think Cal's very good. They were down 17-0 to Idaho last week and came back and won that game. I know, but that's not a very good Cal team. And so I look at Auburn and I see some of the good, but I also see the fact that I think the passing game is still, a work in progress, to probably put it lightly. And meanwhile, I don't think that's the case for Texas A&M. I think A&M is a machine on offense. Defensively, yes, you've got some questions still. I think when you look at them, certainly the Miami game, a lot of pessimism coming out of that game, probably just the way they tackled and all that. But I don't think this Auburn offense is Miami's offense. And this is one where I feel like I should have took advantage of this one when it was at 7.5, but now I'm seeing it like up to 8.5 in a couple of different spots, and I feel like it's only going to go up. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but curious your thoughts on this game, because I tend to look at this, if you're asking me like, hey, what do I think is the most likely scenario? I think A&M winning this thing by double digits. And remember too, this is coming off the heels of this game last season where Auburn won this game, and you would have thought it was just, this was the SEC championship last year for Auburn, right? With the way the program had been going, and, Cadillac and everything. Like, I remember that visual very well. And my guess is so does Texas A&M. And I think this is just a much different A&M team.
Yeah, and so like we're talking about with Cal. I mean, Cal missed 3 field goals in that game against Auburn. I mean, Cal did everything to not win that game against Auburn. And like you said, Sanford and UMass. And look, Miami's looked pretty good so far this year. So we may be a month from now looking at A&M and saying, that loss at A&M, or I'm sorry, that loss at Miami, that it's aged pretty well. I mean, we'll see. I don't know, but so far, Van Dyke has looked good for the Canes, and again, like who Auburn has played just does not look that good. And Keontae Scott, an important Auburn defensive back, had 53 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 passes broken up, an interception, a sack last year. He's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Had surgery on his right. I don't know if it was his foot or his ankle. And they're hoping they can get Nehemiah Pritchett back in the lineup. He's done some practicing this week, and Donovan Kaufman. I don't know that either have been upgraded to probable, but I think there's a chance they play, but we're kind of unsure on that. You know, Auburn, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I definitely think A&M wins. And if I had to pick it, and I do in my contest, I'm gonna pick A&M, but I couldn't quite get there to pull the trigger on a play, um, just because I don't know. I just don't want to lay more than a touchdown with A&M right now.
Yeah.
But I agree with all your sentiments, and I lean Aggies, but it's not an official play, if you will.
Yeah, I may have gotten in on this at 7.5, 8.5. I don't know. That's starting to go even a little higher, even though I think A&M is the better team and may prove that in a convincing way. But we'll see. See what happens. All right, let's talk about a couple of these other games that are outside of SEC on SEC play. As Missouri Memphis is an interesting one because I know you mentioned Memphis was a bad was that last week or the week before against Navy, and of course Navy kept that one close in that game. But the big talk, of course, is Missouri coming out of the win against Kansas State and what that can maybe do for this program. But something else we talked about this week is one thing to beat Kansas State, another thing to turn around and lose to Memphis, and what that could do for halting momentum for this team. But this is this is a pretty low line here in terms of where this is at. And I think, as we also talked about on our daily show, this is one where I can understand Missouri fans are a little nervous heading into this game. This line's only 6.5. Some plays I think at DraftKings now it's on a 5.5 on this one. And so Memphis, not a bad football team. This game is in St. Louis. Brady Cook's availability is obviously the big question here. And if he does play, how effective is he? Oh, this is one of those games. I think if I was a Missouri fan, that would just make me coming off of last week, I would just be stomach in knots. Like, oh boy, this feels like this could go either way, and hopefully it doesn't go the wrong way.
Yeah, major flat slash letdown scenario here. I mean, they got embarrassed by K-State 40-12 last week, and they get revenge. And I mean, you can't win it in a more exciting
Yeah,
fashion than a 61-yard walk-off after an inexplicable 5-yard delay game penalty. I mean, what's going on? But yeah, so Missouri fans, they quickly forgot Harrison Mevis's miss of that chip shot at Auburn to win it at the end of regulation. They got over that quick last Saturday. That's a monster win for Drinkwitz, and especially after getting that 5-yard penalty. But yeah, man, we don't know if Brady Cook's going to play. I know Drinkwitz has said that Sam Horn will get his first career start if Cook is not going to be able to play. And now I bet Memphis last week against Navy, so I'm kind of down on this team. They never even threatened to cover that double-digit number either last Thursday or Friday. Yeah, but just because it's a terrible spot for Missouri, and we don't know about Brady Cook, but at the same time, I'm not very high on Memphis right now. But this is just a hard pass for me. I don't want anything to do with this one at all.
yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a game I would stay far away from, and I hope for my fans of Missouri, I hope they get a win here and move on to the next one, which could feel similar when they go to Vanderbilt next week. Could be kind of the same setup because everyone's looking ahead to that LSU game right now and saying, "Oh boy, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0." Ooh, you got to win these next two to get there. All
And
right,
let's don't
here's
forget they only beat Middle Tennessee by 4 at
right. So
home as
it's
well.
yeah,
So there's that too.
you don't become a juggernaut just by winning one game. So yes, that is certainly the case. UTSA is at Tennessee. Of course, this is all going to be about how the balls bounce back. I mean, to me, Brian, does Frank Harris play? Does he not play?
Right.
Turf toe injury, those kind of things are that's a nagging thing. That's if he doesn't play, if he does play, I can't imagine he's 100%. And to me, this just seems like one of those. UTSA lost to Army last week. I don't know the exact numbers. I was looking those up in terms of how many rushing yards they gave up, but we know how Army likes to play. And I just feel like Tennessee's running attack, even if Joe Milton's not perfect here, Tennessee should be able to run the ball. And something else I did bring up, Brian, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. We talked about it on our daily show this week, but um, Josh Heupel after a loss has been pretty remarkable. I think Tennessee averages like 52 or 50 points, 54 points per game after a loss. Thus far, they lost, I think, 8 games his first 2 seasons combined. One of those was the bowl loss to Purdue. So if you don't count that one, they also lost to Alabama in back-to-back losses to Ole Miss and Alabama. But the other games, like they have just blown teams out. And I know the opponents have been like Tennessee Tech, Missouri a couple times. Vanderbilt, I think, was one of those opponents. But yeah, like they've average margin of victory has been ridiculous. They've scored like 50 plus points per game after a loss. UTSA, pretty good football team, all things considered. But without Frank Harris, I would have to believe this is a huge bounce back spot for Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, but it's not just Frank Harris. I mean,
Right? Yes,
well,
it's more than yeah,
I mean, obviously they lost Sakari Franklin to Ole Miss, but DeCorian Clark,
yeah.
who had 51 catches, 741 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think he did briefly play last week. I think he had like 1 catch for 5 yards, but he, clearly has not been 100% all season long. And Harris is not 100% if he plays. And, they lose outright to Army without Harris last week, and with Clark again not having a whole lot of impact. And they also lost one of their linebackers to a season ending injury last week. So, it's just not setting up real good for UTSA. But at the same time, I don't want to lay a big number right now with Tennessee, because their last 2 performances just haven't been very good. And again, like without knowing if Harris is playing and how healthy he's going to be, it's just impossible to handicap this one, in my opinion. So yeah, another pass from me.
All right, Charlotte at Florida. Speaking of the team that Tennessee lost to, of course, the Gators. Very impressive last week in terms of what they've done or what they did last week against the Vols. And now they get a Charlotte team that's, they I know they lost at Maryland. Maybe it wasn't by a ton, but this is a game Florida should win. They're basically what a 4 touchdown favorite. I think I saw 27.5, 28 in most places. I feel like, and I know you're going to bring up. I feel like the thought going into the season was how good Billy Napier had been as an underdog, but this time moving into the favorite role, a little bit different perhaps when you get into that role in terms of against the spread.
Absolutely. So I think it's Charlotte or pass. I'm warning everybody, do not lay that big chalk number with the Gators. And here's a few reasons why. Since Napier got to Florida, he's been favored 8 times, 2-6 against the spread, 3 outright losses. As a favorite at with the Raging Cajuns in 2021, he was 3-6 against the spread and 9 favorite roles. Ditto in 2020, he was 3-6 as a favorite. So in the last 3 seasons, and counting the non-cover against McNeese State, Billy Napier teams are 8-18 against the spread. Last 26 as a favorite. But there's not just that. We've got Eugene Wilson, who had like 6 catches in the first quarter. Maybe he didn't get hurt till early second quarter. He's got the collarbone injury. He is out. And now Kingsley, do you remember the
Egu
pronunciation?
Khan.
Egwu Khan, thank you, sir. Egwu Khan, he is out again, re-aggravated that ankle. And then 2 starters on the O line, Mizuku Mazuka,
I
whatever.
can't help you with that one.
Yeah, the transfer from Baylor who starts at offensive guard. He's out for the first half for throwing a punch in those shenanigans late in the Tennessee game, as is the starting offensive tackle Damian George. So in the first half, the Gators are going to be down 3 starting offensive linemen, one of their best receivers, and now 2 of the starting linemen will be back in the second half. But I would just warn people not to lay the points with Florida. I'm not saying to take Charlotte. I'm not betting on Charlotte, but I think it's a Charlotte or pass.
All right, now we mentioned in our notes we don't have anything on Georgia UAB. That's one that we're just going to kind of skip over. Just not a lot there. Georgia's I think it's up to 42, 42 and a half now or something like that. So the Dogs perhaps also a little angry this week after their performance against South Carolina. But if you're still winning by double digits in the SEC, you'll take that. But on to the wrap up portion here. But actually, before we do that, Brian, we had mentioned before looking at some of the SEC Heisman. Um, you can't call them front runners. You certainly can't call them that because there's not any front runners. Which going into the season, we kept talking about, man, look at all these potential guys you could have as front runners for the Heisman. As you've looked at the updated numbers, sad to say that not a lot of those front runners sitting there for SEC players right now.
Not at all. In fact, the only SEC player within the mix whatsoever is LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels off that huge performance in Starkville. FanDuel has him with 25-1 odds. Those are tied for the 7th shortest odds. But beyond Jaden Daniels, you got to go all the way down to the guy with the 17th shortest odds at 60-1, and that would be Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. So if you think the SEC has been down this year, it has been. Period. End of story. But just go look at the Heisman odds, and you've only got 2 of the top 17 players in Heisman contention odds wise are from the SEC. I would think that going into week 4, we could probably go back 2 decades and have at least 4 to 5 in the top 17, I would guess, but I don't know that for sure. But that's just an example of SEC struggles so far this season.
True. Yeah. It's been an interesting start to say the least. So we'll see which of these teams really separate themselves here as we go throughout SEC play. All right, we wrap up here as always with Brian's bets for games outside the SEC. And I know, Brian, as usual, Colorado has been a main talking point throughout this entire season. And what a wild game they had last week. And even more than a wild game, the wild numbers that game pulled in for ESPN when that game did not finish until like 2:30 in the morning or something Eastern time. And yet the numbers were still through the roof for that Colorado State game. But I know they're in the mix this week as 21-point underdogs at Oregon. You've also got some thoughts on Eastern Michigan, Jacksonville State as well, and then we can touch on there were a couple other games you mentioned after that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Colorado plus the 21. We all know there's not going to be any Travis Hunter, probably going to miss the next 3 games, but I'm confident in Shadur Sanders. I'm confident in his group of wide receivers, even without Hunter. I mean, Jimmy Horn Jr., Xavier Weaver are having outstanding seasons. They're going to get Alton McCaskill, the transfer running back from Houston, who coming out of the spring, they had him number 1 on the depth chart. But I like all the running backs. Dylan Edwards, the freshman, but I mean all these running backs that they've used, and they are starting to get the tight end involved. Last week had a touchdown catch, and I believe he had a critical 2-point conversion as well. So I'm not worried about Colorado's offense. Shadur Sanders, right there with Spencer Rattler. I don't think anybody's playing better quarterback than those guys. And I think Shadur Sanders, I mean, he just puts it right between the numbers on nearly every single throw. So I'm not worried about Colorado's offense. Am I worried about Colorado's defense? Yeah, I am. But, even if Oregon has a great offensive performance, even if they score 50, let's say they score 52, that only leaves Colorado's offense needing us to get to 32. And I'm not like
No.
mailing it in that Oregon's going to score at least 52. I don't really care about Oregon's result against Hawaii, where they held the Rainbow Warriors to 10 points, or to the FCS opener, Portland State. They held them to 7 points. And I know they scored 55 against Hawaii. And they have 81 against Portland State, something like that. It was crazy. But those performances I kind of throw out. The performance that we saw against a respectable foe was them trailing a lot of that game, and Texas Tech, they still scored 30 points, and Texas Tech had 4 interceptions, or I'm sorry, 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions. Um, Shuck threw 3 picks. Sanders is not throwing 3 picks. I guarantee you that. And Texas Tech, even with those 4 turnovers, they still had 174 rushing yards, 282 passing yards. They had 27 first downs. And I think Colorado's got a better quarterback and a better offense than Texas Tech. So to take Colorado plus 21, I'm all about it. I'm also hopeful they're going to get Miles Slusher, the former Arkansas safety who had 6 tackles in the opener against TCU and the game sealing tackle on 4th down. I'm hoping he's going to be back. I can't say that that's for sure. He's questionable, but he has missed the last 2 games, and I'm hoping he's going to be back. But again, to me, this is just about Colorado's offense. If Texas Tech can score on them, Colorado's going to score on Oregon. And I'm not like sitting here calling for the outright upset, but if somebody wants to put a little $20 bill
Why
on
not?
plus 800 money line odds, why not?
Why not?
Why not? And because look, if it's a close game, late third, early fourth, the live line is probably going to be, Oregon only minus like 200 or minus 250 on the
Yeah.
money line, and you could hedge it and take Oregon minus 200 money line, and you know you could profit either way. So I'm not against the plus 800 money line, but the main play for money management, Colorado plus 21.
All right, and then Eastern Michigan, Jacksonville States. I know another one. Eastern Michigan seems to be a popular play here this season. I think what was it? Minnesota was that's the other one we talked about a couple weeks ago. But Eastern Michigan back on the board here this week. Jacksonville State.
Yeah, this is automatic play for me. Chris Creighton and the Eastern Michigan Eagles, their last 50 as an underdog. They're 38, 11, and 1 against the spread. They're either plus 6 or plus 6.5 against Rich Rod at Jacksonville State. And I am on Eastern Michigan. If your number is 6.5, I'd buy the half point to 7. If your number is 6, don't sweat it. I still think we got a good chance to cash because they cash very consistently as underdogs.
All right, and then a couple others. I said you said you wanted to hit on UCLA's at Utah and UCF at Kansas State. Although injuries play a factor in those particular games.
Yeah, so if Cam Rising and or Brant Keithay, the tight end, if they get upgraded, I am probably going to be on Utah. They have won 16 in a row at home, and the last 6 head-to-head with UCLA, they're 5-1 both straight up and against the spread. And the only loss was last year. They lose 42-32 at UCLA. So they are in revenge mode. And also Utah last 12 at home, 9-3 against the spread. Whittingham said early in the week they're going to announce today whether Rising's playing or not. But obviously, we've been doing the show for a while. I don't know if that announcement is out, but I am potentially going to play Utah. Another game that I was looking at was K-State. K-State 7-1 against the spread. Last 8 as a home favorite. They host UCF. So we saw Kleiman say Will Howard was questionable. I forget if it was yesterday or the day before. I want to say it was yesterday. But anyhow, so when that happened, the line moved from 6.5 down to 4.5 or 5. Last night, I was doing a show on VSiN, and Matt Humans, the host, told me a K-State source told him that Howard is not going to play. and it was 4.5, 5 when he said that. I woke up this morning, it was 3.5 or 4. So I'm starting to think Howard's probably not going to play. I was going to take K-State, so I'm less enthusiastic about it, but the prize of their recruiting class, Avery Johnson, was in for the spring, enrolled early. He's gotten a little playing time, even got in for Missouri game briefly. He looks like a good runner. But let's remember, John Rice Plumlee's out for UCF as well. I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of Timmy McClain. So I lean K-State, but I'm not like going to sit here and rant about it that our listeners need to tail me on this one. Without Will Howard, it'll be a freshman starting. So we'll see. And then before we wrap up, there are some lines for next week.
Oh, yeah.
If you
I
want,
forgot
if you
about
want
the
to,
look ahead
yeah,
lines.
if
Yes.
you wanted me to throw those out.
All right. So the ones I have on what you sent me: Kentucky -3.5 against Florida, Georgia -13 at Auburn, LSU -3 at Ole Miss. That's an interesting one. Texas A&M -7 against Arkansas, and then Alabama -11.5 at Mississippi State.
Yeah, so we can compare these lines to what they were in the games of the year back in August, just to see how the odds makers have adjusted each team. So um, Alabama, there actually was not a line for the game at Mississippi State. So the game LSU at Ole Miss, that is now 3, it was 4.5 back in the summer. Texas A&M was -3 to Arkansas, and so that's 7 now, right? I'm not looking at it. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah,
I think, yeah,
I think
it's
that's right.
7.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then also Auburn and Georgia. Georgia was 18.5. Now they are 13. And yeah, and does that the Florida line was oh gosh, I don't have it written down in my Phil Steele mag. I thought, oh yeah. No, maybe not. All right, just a couple of nuggets on those. For let's see. For the Florida Kentucky. So Mark Stoops as a home favorite, 15-9 against the spread since the start of 2019. Napier as an underdog now 18-6-1 against the spread with 11 outright wins. So there you go. There's some. So we'll see how the lines change based on injuries and this weekend's results, and we can kind of revert back in next week's conversation to what they were last Thursday or Friday.
Yep. You're feeling confident about a certain team. You better get those now because we know there will be some
Right.
changes after
Yes.
what happens this weekend. So there are your look ahead lines looking ahead to week 5. But as always, Brian, lots of great stuff here on this edition of the SEC Football Betting Show here on Southeastern 14. And anything you want to plug, Brian, before we wrap up?
Oh, just you can find my content at majorwagers.com, and obviously Twitter at Vegas B Edwards. Any of our listeners, feel free to hit me up if you got any questions about any other games or even like live lines during the action on Saturday. I'm pretty much on Twitter 24/7 on Saturdays, so I'll probably get it, and if I get a chance, I can reply. But other than that, enjoyed it, Blake, and best of luck to all of us with our bets. Lots of good ball games this week.
Yep, should be a lot of fun. And before we hop off, we got to give a shout out to one of our new sponsors here. And it's fitting that Brian is involved in this because Brian is a Chomps man, right? Like it is all about the Chomps, the Florida Gator Chomp, of course. But our friends at Chomps who have sent us a lot of tasty snacks here. Chris and I have been enjoying those so far. But as you always, guys, you've seen us advertise Chomps. Check out that link in the description below. 15% off your order. SC14 is the code on that. So we appreciate our friends at Chomps for being a new sponsor here at Southeastern 14. And as always, we're looking for more sponsors. If you are someone who wants to sponsor this show, the SEC Football Betting Show we do with Brian Edwards, you can reach out to caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. Always looking for additional advertising opportunities, and we appreciate your support of our channel. But again, thanks to Brian for joining me. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and we will talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.